After 3 weeks of having our home base in Bulgaria's biggest city, we took a day trip to Plovdiv, the second biggest city. Dating back 6,000 years, this is apparently the oldest continually inhabited city in Europe, and this adventure was extra special for us because we had a local to show us around. This is another one of those places I was super excited to visit, even before coming to Bulgaria. Lexi and I have been playing on a kickball team called Kiki Minaj for years in Chicago, and our Bulgarian friend on the team, Plamena, grew up in Plovdiv. And even when she was living in the States, she would go home quite a bit, including while we were in Bulgaria. So seeing our friend in her home city was an opportunity that we just couldn't pass up. Since we were just doing this as a day trip, we got up very early to catch the 6:20 a.m. train from Sofia. Exhausting, but worth it to maximize our time there. This was the first Bulgarian train we took, and I love all the graffiti on it. So much more interesting than just a boring silver train. The train had those old school 6-seater compartments, which I don't think I've ever actually seen in person before. I've been on plenty of trains in Europe, but they've all had a more open layout. Although I feel like I have seen this somewhere.
Oh, mi scusi. Mi scusi.
Luckily, the people in our compartment were pretty normal. One woman actually lived in the US for a few years, so we kind of connected over that.
Hi. Buongiorno.
The ride took about 2.5 hours, most of which I tried to sleep through so I could fully enjoy the rest of the day. Plamena met us near the train station when we got off around 9 a.m., and let me tell you, it was so nice to see someone from home. Traveling long term is a lot of fun, but it's also tough being away from existing friends for so long. So seeing a familiar face was really wonderful. We started the day walking through a really pretty park towards the ancient ruins of this Roman forum. This is one of the things I've really enjoyed about Bulgaria in general, not just Plovdiv. If you want to see ancient Roman ruins, you don't have to get a ticket for anything, and there aren't a million people around. This kind of thing is just there as part of the city, and you can freely walk through it. We continued over to the town square with a very colorful reminder that Plovdiv was the European capital of culture 4 years ago. Pretty cool. We got breakfast at a cute little cafe, and once again, we were right next to some Roman ruins. Our seats outside at the cafe overlooked this Roman stadium that used to seat 30,000 people. And once again, I love how you can just go there and walk around. Like, it hasn't been turned into this big commercialized thing. You can even see part of this stadium when you're shopping. That's right, there's literally a shopping mall built on top of these stadium ruins, making this definitely the most interesting thing I've ever seen in an H&M. Go ahead and click that like button if you think this is fascinating. We spent the rest of the afternoon just kind of wandering. One of the highlights was this little church with a lot of gold and white colors inside. But then outside, you get this great panoramic view of the city. This city was built around 7 hills, and you can see some of them from here. Another cool spot is this ancient Roman theater, which was actually discovered as recently as the 1970s and is now used as an actual theater again. I feel like it would be so cool to see a show here. After a while, we took a break at this charming cafe, and I had a local beer from Plovdiv, which was really good, really refreshing. Then more walking around, including a visit to this cool-looking blue house that's now a museum. We made our way to Kapana, which is a very artsy district, and probably my favorite part of the city that I saw that day. Like, look at this one shot right here. There's just so much visually going on here. I love it. There's also a lot of really cool street art. Some of my favorites were actually ads for brands like Johnny Walker and Happy, which is a big corporate restaurant chain in Bulgaria. It's really cool how they made their ads fit the aesthetic of the neighborhood. We got lunch around there, and I had this duck and risotto dish, which was probably one of the best meals I had all month. Lexi and I also each got tarator soup, which is this cold yogurt-based soup that's common all over the country. But she got one with beets, which I hadn't seen before, and it made this really nice pink color. After lunch, we made our way over to this ancient basilica that's now a museum. Inside, it's got all these stone mosaics depicting birds, among other things. But I think I was more fascinated by this machine that you're supposed to use to wrap your shoes in plastic to keep the floors clean. Like, I've seen things you're supposed to put over your shoes before, of course, but I don't think I've ever seen a machine that does it. Some people were really struggling with this thing, which was hilarious to watch. And that pretty much concludes the stuff we saw with Plovdiv. She was super generous to spend 9 hours showing us around her city, making this one of my favorite days in Bulgaria. Like, I'm sure Plovdiv still would have been great without her, but it's always better being with a local. We got some coffee by the fountain in the square we were at earlier, and before we parted ways, she pointed out this guy walking around selling socks. Apparently, this guy is a Plovdiv legend who's been selling socks on the street for over 20 years.
Bye, Plovdiv!
Bye, Plovdiv!
We said goodbye to Plovdiv as she got into a taxi, and like 20 seconds later, we randomly met one of her friends on the street. I wish I got this on video because this was crazy. This guy on the sidewalk saw us looking at our phones and at our maps looking confused, and he came over to help us, and then he was like, "Are you Plovdiv's friends?" I guess he knew she had some American friends in town, and it's just crazy that we happened to run into him and he happened to recognize us as Plovdiv's friends. He was also really nice and pointed out the way that we were supposed to walk. We were also walking way faster than the actual traffic, so after we said goodbye to that guy, we saw Plovdiv's taxi pass us again. Yeah, this was just a hilarious couple minutes.
We met your friend!
We met your friend!
Even though we weren't with her anymore, we still had one more place to visit. I mentioned that Plovdiv was built around 7 hills, and we still had time to climb one of them before catching our train. So this is the hill that starts with a B. I'll throw the name up on the screen. At the top, there's a monument with a statue of a Soviet soldier, and also a beautiful 360-degree view of the city. This was a great spot to look at the other hills within the city, and also the mountains just beyond the city limits. On our way back down, we passed some guys casually boxing, and then past a little park with these little trampolines built into the ground. I know we're not 10 years old anymore, but I feel like jumping on these would be super fun. And it was. We got to the station right before an absolute downpour started, which was fine because the platform was covered and it made the train across from us glisten in the rain. Our train arrived after not too long, and look at that. Just look at that. There are freaking lions on this one. Now I'm just gonna be disappointed every time I see a train that's not covered in beautiful artwork. The ride back to Sofia was sweaty. That's the only word I can use to describe it. The window in our compartment wouldn't stay closed, so Lexi had to do it manually to avoid getting too hot. We got back to Sofia around midnight, feeling wet and exhausted, but very glad we got to spend some time in Plovdiv, as short as it was. I wish we had more time there because I would have loved to spend at least a few nights there. We left the train station through some beautifully decorated underground passages, like I am so into this artwork, and made our way back to our apartment, ready to experience one more week in Bulgaria, after some delicious late night food, of course. I've got more videos from Bulgaria coming your way, so hit that subscribe button so you don't miss them, and I will see you in the next one.